Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, everybody! And welcome to Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And it's the two of us today. It is
Just
old school. Two of us.
That
Gonna pay royalties on this song.
Grover Washington, man, still raking it in for his one hit song.
Yep. Yeah, well, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
He didn't write and doesn't sing on. He just plays the saxophone on the big, long 9-minute album version, which no one's even ever heard.
But he came up with it, and then obviously it's been sampled a gajillion times and remade. And
Joe samples, not ironically, his electric piano sound has, but not the sax. That Grover Washington's a saxophone player. He's a light jazz saxophone player. He's barely has any presence on that song in the version you hear on the radio. I just think that's funny. We should consider it a Bill Withers song because he's singing it.
Yeah,
but he didn't write it either. So it's just a manufactured pop of its day. Nobody whose name is associated with it really had much of anything to do with it. The sax solo, to be fair, is really good, but but it's not so good that they felt that it couldn't survive on the radio without it.
Right
there.
That's welcome to
third and most substantive time we've talked about that song on this show.
Welcome to Saxophone Talk. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're here to talk about everything regarding saxophone solos.
All the great lost saxophone solos in pop music history.
It's the podcast you never knew you needed and probably still don't.
I can't remember, but there was a 30 Rock episode. Maybe I've talked about this before. It's relevant to our show, but Liz is like thinking that she's become totally irrelevant in her own life and her own career. And she comes walking in this dream sequence. She walks down this very Hollywood-esque, street and walks by this poster for Transformers 11 or whatever. And it says written by nobody. And these figures appear to her out of the fog. And she's like, what's going on? Who are you? And they're like, I was a travel agent. I played hot saxophone solos on rock and roll songs and stuff. And there are all these people who their whole reason for being is gone now. And she sees herself as that as well. And I thought that was so funny at the time.
The woman who plays the travel agent is my friend, Christine Toy Johnson.
It's one line.
It's a great bit. Yeah.
It's this haunting thing. You know what I mean? And she's this hollow, haunted look. And like, hers almost, I like the saxophone one because to me, that's like, we used to have that all the time. And now literally there are none of those. But the travel agent's the best because that was people's careers for ages. Yeah. And now they just completely got replaced by your phone.
If I remember correctly, like the last time my dad and stepmother decided to take a trip because they don't travel very often, I believe they went to our old family friend, Sue, this woman Sue that we know, who was a travel agent, and I believe they went, we want to book a vacation, and she like went, yeah, okay, and she's like, well,
go with God.
Yeah, and they're like, well, there's this thing called the internet that you can pretty much do everything yourself.
And that's scary to some folks. I get that.
But yeah. All right. Oh yeah. My, you're talking about saxophone solo. It made me think like, Rob Lowe's character in St. Elmo's Fire, that's what he is. He's a rock saxophonist. And we're and watching that, we're supposed to be like, oh my God, he is the coolest. That dude's gonna be a star. Like his character is gonna be a rock god.
Little did he know that just right around the corner, he was going to be completely obsolete. I mean, just a few years later, we were joking about that last night too, because we were watching a couple of scary movies that from around 2002, 2004 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And my friend who I was watching, she asked me, when is this? And I'm like, it's kind of funny that you can't tell. Because if we were watching a movie, you can tell if you see a phone, or there's a few things where if you see them, it's different. But fashions, hair, everything, it all is the same basically. The cars don't even look that different. And I was like, if we were watching a movie in 1989 that took place in 1975, I mean, the profound difference in culture and in style and stuff would just jump out and smack you in the face. And I just thought that was kind of a weird phenomenon. So I don't know. We've gone this is interesting maybe, but we've gone a little off track.
I was going to say, this might be my favorite beginning of a show that we've done in a very long time, because I love this tangent of just talking about saxophones.
I'm trying to get this is like the warm up act, we're starting the show a little early today.
True. That's true. I'm still in coffee mode. Yep.
That's right. I'm in a little bit of a weird mood. I feel a little bit like Michael Landon in one of those Highway to Heaven episodes where like he loses his faith, shakes his fist at the heavens and screams at God. And I guess by that metric, we're talking about the right guy, because he's one of the crustiest dudes in all of Hollywood history, really.
He absolutely is. Today we are going to be doing a countdown of looking into the top 10 movies as decided by Joel and Ryan. Very much, very, very few agreements on our top 10 list, but that's what you get when you get a guy.
We were in agreement. To be fair, we were in agreement on almost the entire list. We just had stuff in radically different spots on the list.
Oh, okay.
Right, because when you look at the top 10, your top 10 is there, right? It's just all not where you thought it would be. And it's the same for mine. Mine is, it's all there. It's just, why is this here? That kind of thing. So
all right, well, we are going to be looking at, and that's what happens when you get a guy who has had the kind of career, the breadth of work, and working for decades at like the highest level, and not always needing to be the lead. Sometimes he's the lead. He really, really excels at being, that sort of assassin supporting character that just comes in and steals the show, and kills all his lines. We are talking about Eugene Allen Hackman. So Gene Hackman, you know what I didn't know? It was fun looking up some stuff. Gene Hackman left school at 16 and became a Marine.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. That was and he served for a good 5-6 years.
Yep.
It's awesome. Dude has had a life. And then of course went on to he's written novels, he's had full families, multiple marriages, it's just the dude has been theater.
Very cool. And I mean, not he's always sort of on our mind. He comes up on the show all the time, but the thing that made me think of him was that he's been retired since that same year I was just talking about, 2004. And he kind of, he didn't come out of retirement, but he agreed to do an interview for the 50th anniversary for one of his most iconic roles. And just reading the interview was so funny, because it's like, what did you even bother for? He's trying to be nice, but he's just not want to talk to people, and you could just feel it in the thing. he's being nice. He just is saying nothing useful. And I remember really any interview I ever saw with him they were always the same. They were just, well, you know, I don't know. There's like, well, they're like, what do you think of the lasting legacy of the film? Well, I know it helped my career, so I guess I'm grateful for that.
That was my favorite line of. I know that you sent me that, or you told me to read that article.
What do you?
He's like,
he's kind of trying to guess what they maybe want him to say, and he can't guess right even. Yeah. It's all business with him. And then they say, like, well, what do you think? You know, that it changed movies and all this. He's like, well, he just starts going, well, it's about this guy who's trying to do this thing. It's like, we all know what it's about. You don't have to remind us, like, the plot. It was such a funny interview. And
he was like, he's talking, like, they're like, well, what do you think about the lasting legacy and, you know, and sort of how it's relevant today?
You watched it? He's like, well, I haven't
watched it since it came out, since I was in a dark room in 1971. Yeah.
It was really, I mean, it was weird, and I'm sure the interviewer they just do the best they can. They had an exclusive with Gene Hackman coming out of retirement, so yay, but it's such a worthless interview in such a wonderful way. He's so all about the task at hand and not about any of this other stuff. And I always, whenever you meet some guy like that, it's always like, wow, that is cool, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into our top 10.
We better.
Yeah. Our top 10 list of the movies of Gene Hackman.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Haven't heard that for a while.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's been deep dives and dogs. That's what our show has been lately. All right, so number 10 is you had like in our text exchange, I think you sort of said, oh, you were talking about some of the movies that were very kind of trying to think of the word you use, but it's very like indicative of the kind of roles that he played, you know, certainly in like the 2000s and stuff, but in this one it is Crimson Tide.
Oh, yeah.
Gene Hackman. And
Crimson Tide is I accidentally, I was asking Joel what kind of show you wanted to do this week on Wednesday or something. I was like, I said, hey, top 10 Gene Hackman, you know, because I just saw this interview, and I accidentally sent it to our little movie show with Joel and Ryan insiders thread. So this, you know, 12 other people or something got it, and they're all like, that's a good idea and stuff. And I was like, what's happening? But it's funny, they all have these different lists, but Crimson Tide was on a bunch of them. Crimson Tide is really a really good performance. It's a very slick and Hollywood thriller that is somewhat disposable, if I'm being honest, but it's loaded with really good supporting cast. But the real thing is Denzel and Hackman going at it. Hackman is outstanding in it. The guy on the page is really exciting and fun, and he just digs into that and leans into it. And Denzel on the page is a little more enigmatic and weird, and he sort of leans into that. And the two of them are at loggerheads just from the moment they meet each other, practically. And I love that film. It's got a lot of tension in it. It's about a mutiny and a bunch of reverse mutinies that happen on a nuclear submarine. When we think that the Soviet Union has gone rogue and invaded, you know, some Kazakhstan or something, I can't remember. And they get a message that while they're in the middle of combat with somebody, they get a message that they're supposed to launch all their nukes, and then it gets cut off, and then they argue over whether they go with the message that they have in hand, the partial message that they have, or they go with
Yeah.
It's set up really smartly too by this difference in philosophy of this old school soldier and this young up and coming, like, thoughtful executive officer, you know, who's serving amongst these people for the first time. Gene's he's got to say a lot of dumb stuff in it. A lot of very overrighty guys did script polishes on it, most famously Quentin Tarantino. And so it's got all these dialogue sojourns and all this stupidness. And that's fun. It's right, Joel. It's fun, but it's kind of it makes you groan a little.
It makes you groan. It's you know, the quintessential moment for that is, you know, they're sitting there waiting for it, like the message that is going to determine the fate of both of these guys, and he's just like, "You ever seen the Lippensteiner horses, or whatever they're called?
Lipizzaner stallions.
The Lipizzaner stallions." From Spain. From Spain. Portugal. Yeah.
You find out at the end. Spoiler alert for Crimson Tide.
Yeah. And Denzel Washington just has he you know, this is what's great about it. He doesn't like, you know, he just is like just staring right back at him. Going, talk all, and Denzel is great in this also because you have that, you know, early on the movie, you know, they have that great moment where they're standing up, or like they haven't submerged yet, and they're looking out over it, and Gene Hackman says, like, "Oh, such a beauty, you know, it's a beautiful, like, this view, I never get tired of this view, it's beautiful." And Denzel says nothing, and he goes, "That's the right," like something like, like, "I like that you didn't answer."
You didn't. Somebody else would have talked through the moment and ruined it.
Yep. And and
that's the last time they get along for the next 2 hours. Denzel's got this great moment in it. The fun thing about the movie is that you literally can take either guy's side, and and the other guy becomes the villain. It really is written in a way that it's symmetrical from a character standpoint in a way that you can flip it either way, which is really fun. But early in the movie, you know, they're talking about blah, blah, blah. What are our responsibilities? What are our roles to play in this situation? Stuff that it's the officers, you know, the scene from all these submarine movies have it, you know, Hunt for Red October's got probably the best one, but it's all the officers sitting around, you know, finishing up lunch, having their coffee or whatever. And he says, you know, what do we do in this case, and in this or that? The captain's throwing all these hypotheticals out to get the feel of where his officers are at psychologically. And Denzel's got the great line that, you know, in the modern world, the enemy isn't the other army or the other person. The enemy in the nuclear age, the enemy is war itself. And if you believe that, then you're on Denzel's side throughout the entire film. But
right,
they both have a legitimate point of view. And
Hackman's response, I don't think it's right in that moment, but he has the line, it's like, "We are here to protect democracy, not to practice it."
Right.
And so, like, and if you get on board with that line, then it's easy to go on Hackman's side on the
but it's a very hyper film. It's a very jibber jabbery, noisy, exciting thing, and both those actors, but Hackman in particular, because he really is the blustery version. He just, every chance he has in the film, he plays it low and calm, and you know what I mean? He doesn't play this guy who's off his rocker at all. Right. It's really, really awesome. We were talking about Crimson Tide more than his performance in it now, but which is the danger of shows like these. But
right,
I don't know, when maybe we'll talk about Crimson Tide in a Tony Scott episode or something. I don't know. It's one of those slick thrillers from the late 90s that it's really, really good. It's one of the best ones, really. I dig it. And he's
it's super fun
in it. His gravitas in it is, you know, and the way he speaks with authority, you need to have all that. And that alone just sort of makes the story complicated. And they wanted this story to be a complicated story. So.
Yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of my favorite actors is in this movie, George Zunza.
Zunza, Matt Craven, Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini. I mean, just up and down the roster of these other officers that are being pulled in every which direction. Zunza's fantastic in it.
Yeah, he's really great. I love him. So I don't know at what point we'll get to do a deep dive into George Zunza. So I wanted to mention him. All right. Now, not on our list is another Tony Scott, Gene Hackman collab, and that is Enemy of the State with Will Smith.
I remember when I did my solo show and it was 70s conspiracy theories, and one of our treasured listeners wrote me and was like, "What about Enemy of the State?" I'm like, well, it's not that great, and it's not from the 70s. And I mean, what are you talking about?
Unless, I mean, there is a very, 1998 is pretty 70s adjacent. It's only almost
the reason
2 decades
we're
off.
talking about it here instead of later, because it's connected with a much more wonderful film.
Yeah.
Directly connected in a way it's not directly connected to Crimson Tide, but this was the next Tony Scott film, and because of his experience on Crimson Tide, he showed up in it, and it's fun when he shows up in it. It is one of those ringer parts that Joel was talking about at the beginning of the show, where it's just all of a sudden you're watching some kind of movie and all of a sudden Gene Hackman's in it. It's 2/3 of the way through and it just becomes his show. And we're grateful for that. It's a really, really fun bit of that film. That film's enjoyable, if again, a little much to be considered a classic of any kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll get to the sort of character. He's not really playing the same character so much as he's emulating the same character, which is interesting from a later film. So.
All right, for number 9, we go back very early in Gene Hackman's career, and that is his fantastic Academy Award nominated turn in Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah,
as Buck. Oh my God, what is his full name? Buck Barrow.
Buck Barrow, right? He's Clyde Barrow's brother or cousin or something. Brother, I believe. It's good. He's kind of nice when, again, same kind of thing. He's not in a lot of the early parts of the movie. And then when he shows up, you're really grateful for him because Warren Beatty as Clyde and Faye Dunaway as Bonnie are just they're really tough to pin down. And when we start spending a few longer bits of time with either their victims or their cohorts, those people help bring a little bit of reality to that story that it wouldn't have otherwise. And that to me, that's always been his job in that. And he's fantastic in it. It's certainly at that time, it was definitely worthy of an Oscar nomination. I'm just not a huge Bonnie and Clyde fan. I just think I think of the movies we celebrate from the late 60s and early 70s. It's one of the wankier of the baby boomer fantasy stories. And I think that the mob movies or crime spree movies have been sort of done better since. That said, he's pretty awesome in it. I can't deny it. He's one of the best things about it. Him and I guess on the flip side of him, because he brings the weight and urgency to everything, which the film needs somebody to do at some point. It can't just be this dream like thing. Right. And the other guy obviously is Gene Wilder, who shows up late, and it brings a lot of comic relief to it so that it doesn't, but they do feel very, even though they weren't superstars at the time, they do feel very much like ringers that appear suddenly in this film to do a task that's not even really very story related. That's more like a film tool kind of person. Right. I like what you said. You made I like your point. Because the whole movie, the movie is a love story between these two people that are, doing really horrible things. But yet we get caught up, or we're asked to get caught up in the love story. And then it isn't until Gene Hackman's character comes along that you kind of start, like you said, he brings that, he kind of starts to ground the movie again. Nope. It's a crime story, y'all. That's basically, it's literally, it's not just him that does that, but his his appearance coincides with the moment where that switch happens. And
yeah.
I do like that. Something has to change in that movie for it to become the classic that it is, and it comes just in time. So
so I think that's a really great point. So that's our number 9 film. A couple others that sort of in the 60s and 70s here. We have Young Frankenstein, of course. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
How did that show up on people's list? I mean, he's hardly in that, and even when he does it, it isn't anything. That's weird to me.
It's a great cameo. It's a really funny cameo that's so unexpected, and I think because you look at especially his
cool.
early.
I agree.
It's cool.
I mean,
but
Young Frankenstein is great. So
yeah. But you look at his early career and you don't really see a whole lot of comedy. And right. I think the fact that people were watching this and, and you're going, oh, this is the guy from, the Poseidon Adventure and French Connection and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's Gene Hackman doing comedy and, playing, him and Peter
Gene
Boyle.
Wilder connection again. I mean, that's why we're mentioning it after Bonnie and Clyde, because they were in that stuff fairly memorably together. And maybe he's got some connection to Mel Brooks that I don't know about, but I mean, it feels like that's why that little bit happened. And it is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's more of a fun bit of trivia than a awesome performance that we need to honor. So I was surprised people were listing it off. Maybe they just haven't seen enough of these other ones or something.
Well, I think, maybe there's that, but I also think that there's an element of, it's become sort of a touchstone for famous cameos. It's kind of one of those, like you said, it's like a trivia bit. It's now a trivia bit that everyone knows and feels like they might be the only one to know this. So
I'm the only one who recognized Gene Hackman. I really do actually believe that was a real phenomena back when the film was new, that people were and they thought that they were in on the joke and in on the secret. And that's one of the joys of that moment. But not also, it's like you say, he doesn't just show up to just do a task. He kind of nails it. And so, so that's what's cool about it. But
we also
10,
have
not top 20 really even,
also from the 70s, that isn't going to make our list, an incredible ensemble movie, A Bridge Too Far.
Again, these are the reason I put these here is because they're these. I mean, Bridge Too Far, he's kind of in command, literally and figuratively, of an entire sequence in it, like a lot of people that are in the film. But it's, like Joel says, it's an ensemble movie without really a central character. You just keep kind of bopping through the story to one thing to the next. And this is so it feels like a cameo. Everything in A Bridge Too Far feels like a cameo.
Feels like a cameo,
Big war movie. Okay, now suddenly it's Elliot Gould's movie. Now it's Robert Redford's. Now it's Ryan O'Neill's. Now it's Sean Connery's. I mean, Michael Caine. The list goes on and on and on and on. And Hackman's right up the top. He's kind of in the Michael Caine, Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, top tier. It's the young guys. Yeah. Even like Redford and stuff, obviously, who's a superstar. They're Redford and Gould and Ryan O'Neil, I think, are the second tier, which is fun. Yeah. I mean, when you can get that sort of all these leading men and they play in second fiddle to all these big character actors just going for it. It's a fun film. So
I mean, it's clearly like Sir Richard Attenborough had something like he had an idea to essentially probably try to do a movie with no leads or whatever, but literally get all the biggest superstar guys. And I'm sure with a phone call, Richard Attenborough's like, hey, you want to come, spend a week on set and you only have like a 5-day commitment and you'll get to shoot this stuff. And they're like, yeah, of course, I'll be there.
I mean, I don't know who they offered stuff to that said no, but I mean, it feels like everyone actually showed up in that one. It's it's a war satire film. Hackman's again great in it, but it's a bit one note. But that's all it can really be when you're part of a short story and not a full narrative. But it kind of goes along with these other small parts in big movies. So, and of course, the smallest part, well, it's not that small. It's pretty significant actually, but because it's part of a small part, a supporting role in a 19-hour snooze fest, it's generally considered a small part is his role in Reds, which is also very, very memorable and kind of fits in here as well.
Yeah. And
that's
again,
the Warren Beatty connection,
Beatty,
because they go back
connection
together. So there's little threads that you can see. He's a crusty guy, and if you do manage to get along with him on a project, or more importantly, if you create a project with him that's worthwhile, he tends to show up again and again and again for you. That's a recurring theme of a lot of actors, but he's definitely in that crew, so it's kind of cool.
Well, speaking of showing up over and over and over again, our number 8 film is one of his iconic villains that he gets to play. He has played in his career, and that is his role as Lex Luthor in Superman.
Well, this is really his first comedy, I think, and he's a comedic character in it in a really true sense. Everything he has to do in Superman, other than a couple of rather cold-hearted bits, it is mostly just zany comedy. Him and Valerie Perrine and Ned Beatty are a comedy team, and the movie needs that. It has sort of this unknown star playing a rather upright. I don't want to say it's boring, because Christopher Reeve's a delight in it. He gets to do plenty of comedy as well. But Superman, one of the challenges of Superman is we talked about it back in our sort of DC extended universe things. What challenges can you, the writer, come up for Superman? It's like the writer has to be the villain in this case for pretty much all of them. You've got to come up with the master plan that can actually thwart this guy, that could literally do everything imaginable to stop it. It's hard. It's a big task, and it's tough for any writers. But from a tonal standpoint, especially in 1978, because there's a lot of really cool things in Superman the motion picture, but it could deserve a deep dive someday. But one of the neatest is those two big above the title stars that aren't Superman. The first one being top billed Marlon Brando. And the second being Gene Hackman. And Hackman's fantastic in it. And he's really fantastic in it. And in the scenes that he shot with Richard Donner for the sequel, which is all of the scenes I see him appear in, he's also fantastic.
Yeah.
In Superman 2 too. He didn't come back and shoot Superman 2. Him and John Williams and a bunch of people, when Donner was fired, just said, you got what you got, kind of with solidarity to the director. They kind of wouldn't ADR, wouldn't do anything for the sequel. So they have a sound alike for him and stuff. And they have all these overdubs and weird crap that make all the things that make Superman 2 awful that people seem to overlook anyway.
Right.
But in Superman, it's really special. That's a special big late 70s event movie. And there's nothing, there's only a tiny little handful of those,
Right.
To me, that's why it's so neat. And like Joel said, his job is to come in, absolutely take stage. Even in his scenes with Superman doesn't really get a word in edgewise for the most part. It's all on him, and he's a superstar in it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, give Christopher Reeve credit and Donner for sort of directing him this way. There isn't a lot of Superman reacting even to it. He's just sort of like, I'm going to let from a character standpoint, Superman is like, I'm just going to let him go because I can stop him at any moment. But I am a little intrigued by this guy, from a movie making, a storytelling standpoint, it just lets this character just go and be kind of off the rails. And you're right, you hit it on the head. There's a comedy trio of of him and Ned Beatty and Miss Tessmacher. What is who plays Miss Tessmacher?
Valerie Perrine.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, and it's really great. Yeah, he's really great, and he has a, because he's Gene Hackman, he does have like this little, he can easily sort of keep a sinisterness behind his eyes. But this is this was comic book movie before we started thinking of comic books differently. And it's, yeah, you're right, the movie absolutely needs it. I think about some of the, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember like really slapsticky stuff from the first movie. I remember in Superman 2, him getting off the snowmobile
although again, that's not him, nor is it his voice. The whole snowmobile thing was an add-in without Hackman.
Oh, that wasn't. Oh, I didn't realize that was one of them. Oh, bummer. All right.
But I'm following you. There is actually, when you go back and watch Superman 78, and especially if you watch the TV version, because in the TV version, the missile heist, which is just a few scenes in the theatrical version, goes on forever. And it's just one dumb, goofy screw up after another. And that was wisely edited down. It's the worst part of the TV cut of it, is all that stuff. Don't need any of it. A little comedy goes a long way, but the stuff with the staircase and Ned Beatty does most of the heavy comedy lifting in it, really. Yeah. But it's comedy. It's all timing, so even though Hackman's being the straight man to a certain degree amongst his own comedy trio, that's still a crucial role, and he nails all of it. It's so great. All of his weird puns to Superman and stuff are, like he just, and then of course none of it really works out. He's fantastic in it. My favorite story about Gene Hackman and Superman was he had this truly iconic late 70s mustache, Hackman. If you look at the shingle for our show, you'll get a good look at it in one of its grander phases. And Richard Donner was like, "Hey man, we're going to ask you to, shave the mustache to play Lex Luthor. You don't have to, we don't have to shave your head or whatever. We'll find a fun way around that. That's already kind of in the script, but the mustache has got to go." And he's like, no, I'm not getting rid of the mustache. He just wouldn't do it. He's like, no, I'll take the $4 million and, this 4 weeks of work, but no, you can't have my mustache. And Dick was like, this is another great late Richard Donner story, but he's like, "Okay, listen, if you shave your mustache, I'll shave mine, and we can send each other a photo, and then, within solidarity with you, because I get that you kind of don't want to do this." And of course, Richard Donner didn't have a mustache in 1978, so this is all just a put on or whatever. We'll do a Superman episode someday. Gene Hackman's, we will, because there's story after story after story. Gene Hackman's, he's great in it, though. He really is. In a way, he held later Superman stories hostage with this version of Lex Luthor that he did, because it really isn't right out of the comics. It's a lark. The film in Krypton and in Kansas, it takes and even at the end, the whole final 70s disaster movie act takes itself very seriously, and that Metropolis is this fun comic book world come to life, and a lot of that they do with the set design and some other incredible things, but a lot of it just is in Clark Kent's presence and Margot's crazy what's the sort of golden age of Hollywood heroine jibber jabber that she has.
That Billy Wilder.
Exactly. And finally, it's that really sort of understated and yet broadly appealing performance from Hackman. It's outstanding. He completely rides the fence to perfection in it. So it really is it may seem like a silly one to choose, but when you're watching it, you should be a little in awe of it. He's a big superstar at the time that the film needed, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Superman probably would have been a hit anyway, but it wouldn't. I don't know that we would be talking about it in such loving terms if it didn't have.
It needed all that stuff. It was a big stew of a thing, and it needed every element. There's this great moment, and that's the other thing I like about it. It's comedy, but there's such subtlety. It's this great moment when and this could be you need to hit this. It's a punchline. It's a wordless punchline that he does in it. And yet, so you need to hit it. You can't just be super subtle about it, but he just makes sure that he's as subtle about it as he can be. Valerie's like, when he talks about his big land grab finale and he's sending these 2 missiles, and the first one's going to California. He didn't even care where the second one's going to. Like, yeah. He says it's going to Hackensack, New Jersey. And Valerie, his sidekick and lover, she's like, Lex, my mom lives in Hackensack. And he goes, Jackman literally, sorry for the impression, but he goes, just shakes his head at her.
Yep.
And it's awesome. And that's it. And it's cruel and horrible. And yet it's funny and it's hard to explain how kind of perfect that is. So we love his take on the character, which is a lot him.
All right. Number 7 is a movie that I have never seen, which is why it was not on my list. And this is where I'll get scolded a little bit from Ryan because it meant that it fell down further in the top 10 list than
if we'd have both seen this, it definitely would have been higher, but only probably a little higher, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
And that is the Gene Hackman Al Pacino movie Scarecrow.
We talked about Scarecrow already during our 70s films or whatever. It's only a year ago and change that I actually saw Scarecrow. It came out on Blu-ray in high definition in the Warner Archive collection. It's a film shot with Panavision cameras, so it's, even though it's a very subtle sort of character road trip film, very Steinbeck-esque. It takes place in what at the time was the modern era, but it feels very much like a Depression era road movie to me. That's what it has the feel of. And I just raved about it in that episode. And to me, it's got 2 things that work miraculously, because the story is a little scattershot and 70s. It's a little slice of lifey. They go through all these little misadventures, and it doesn't really feel like there's an aim to it necessarily, but that's part of its charm. It also has one of those, spoiler alert for Scarecrow, but also has one of those just harsh sort of, we talked about it a little bit with They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It's just really tough, downbeat ending that even though it sort of works and makes the film memorable, the film doesn't seem to earn fully, and it just feels like, wow, but it's got Al Pacino. It's one of my favorite Al Pacino performances of all time, and that's the key to this. Al shows up because he's with Hackman, and that's why this film's so great. Hackman's unadulterated. This is unadulterated Gene Hackman. I really believe this is as close to like his inner self that you get to see in a film. Even though he plays this crabby guy who, quote, according to the movie, has a penchant for brawling. He's always getting into fights with people over every little thing. He eventually gets sent to work camp, to jail over it. It's just fantastic chemistry between 2 people. I can't tell you how amazing that is when you're watching it on screen, or how amazing it was to me. Al, who was later in life very much like the Hackman that we see in Scarecrow, he was this very kind of super into it, really live guy. But in Scarecrow, he isn't. He's this weird little person who's just sort of pokes and jokes and Hackman, you can tell, even though he's crabby and grumpy the whole time and argues with him constantly, he likes him. He just likes this weird dude. And because of that, it becomes this buddy movie. There's this fantastic sequence where it's all in one shot. They're at a diner counter, and ordering breakfast or whatever, and this waitress comes out, and I don't know if the director did this deliberately, or if she did it deliberately, or if she did it by accident and they just reacted to it in the moment, or what. But she just kind of puts everything down, and it's all wrong. And there's this thing where they're talking and doing the scene and moving everything on the counter around to get it in the right place before they eat it. And somewhere in there, while they're playing through this mess, he looks up at her and he goes, "This is your first day?" And there's something just so incredibly honest. And apparently it was, I read up on it, it was totally an improv thing, that it wasn't, that this waitress actress was really, every take, she was annoying the hell out of him. And he gets this little jab into her that got in the movie. But I love it. I love that film. I love Scarecrow. And I've only seen it the one time, and I only saw it a year ago. But it's one of those films where when you see it, you feel like it's been with you your whole life. I always say that about pop songs too, right? If you've never heard a song from 1981 or whatever, but then you suddenly hear it, and you like it, and you listen to it 10 times, it's suddenly the song and you do this magical thing where you travel back in time to when it was new, and it becomes a thing that's been with you ever since then. You may not have connected until now, but I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but I really do think that's a bit of magic that I love when I'm discovering old music, and every once in a while a whole movie will do that. And Scarecrow definitely does, because it's super 1973 or whatever, 74. Mm-hmm. But it's awesome, and they're Hackman's already sort of an established, kind of like we've talking about him in all these roles, an established leading man in a sort of grizzled and earthy way. But watching Pacino play the comic sidekick is just a delight. It's so cool. And what they bring out in each other is magic. I love it. I love that.
Well,
movie.
I clearly need to
well, that's
make some
everybody
time.
needs to see it. It's if you like that sort of thing. If you don't like aimless sort of weird 70s cinema, I was just kind of ripping on Bonnie and Clyde because I feel like that's a movie that sort of lacks direction, but it's punctuated with these iconic moments from cinema history that you can't really deny. So yeah. I dig it for that reason, but I liked this much more because it's much more of a human story about people that you really start to very much believe in and get invested in this weird way. It works on you in a weird way that I really enjoy. Jerry Schatzberg, really good 70s and early 80s director, made that, and it's outstanding.
All right, everybody, Scarecrow watching party over at my house. Come on over.
Well, before you knew Pacino as really it happens in Godfather 2, and then there's no looking back after that.
Yeah.
He's just big superstar at that point. He's a movie star. And every time he shows up in anything, for good or ill, it's usually for good, but he's a movie star. And this is the last chance for you to get to see him where he isn't a movie star. And it's incredible.
That's a good point.
So that's more of a compliment to him maybe than Hackman, but Hackman really is his sort of inner grouchy self. It's all there on the surface, and he just brings a lot of himself to it. It's an awesome performance. It's the two of them. It's one of their favorite movies that they did in their careers, and yet very few people have seen it.
Well, so. Another movie that I haven't seen, and we come to find out that you haven't seen it either, is a movie that he was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor. It was his his second nomination. But it's a movie called I Never Sang for My Father.
Well, in one of those weird Best Supporting Actor roles where he was the lead of the movie, he was just the second build to a more famous guy. So they got it flipped. That happens a lot in movie history. We won't talk about it, but to me, it's Hackman's movie. But beyond that, I can't say much about it. Joel and I, neither of us have seen it. But when I accidentally asked our crew about it, more than one person brought that up. So we thought we'll get it here on the list near Scarecrow, which is another sort of
Right. And as we were
time film.
And as Ryan and I were both putting together our list, and we're looking at different lists to sort of refresh our memory of the career of Gene Hackman, it popped up over and over again. And I'm like, I've never even heard. And I gotta say,
if I'm being honest, I hadn't heard of it either.
Yeah.
I only know what I read in the last couple of days.
I gotta say that there is, and maybe if I get around to it, I'll post it on our Facebook page, but like there's on one of the edges, am I on Wikipedia or IMDb? This is on Wikipedia. Actually, they have the poster for this movie actually just says, "Yes, I Never Sank My Father is a wonderful motion picture." And then it just lists all of these critics who gave it positive reviews. So it doesn't even say anything about the movie. It's like, no, seriously, people, this is a good film. You should see it. That's what it's like. Oh yeah, nobody probably went and saw this because it probably is depressing as hell. But
maybe it looks
based
good.
on a play.
I need to get it on the list for sure. So
yeah, based on a play. So it's good. Okay, moving on. Number 6 is one of my favorite performances. This one I believe was number 2 on my list. And it's in one of my favorite movies. 2 or 3, yeah. Maybe 3.
It was high on your list, higher on your list than mine. Although it was on my list, I really do like it.
This is
there's a drop off from this to Scarecrow in the voting, because Scarecrow was only voted on one guy. I voted it high, but not super high.
Right.
All these next movies, you can kind of consider this the list, starting with this one. So maybe it feels low, but it really is in that elite clump where we all agree this is the stuff right here.
Yeah. But this is one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite performances by him, and that's The Royal Tenenbaums, Wes Anderson's film. What year was that? 2001. Yeah, I mean, I freely admit I'm a sucker for Wes Anderson. I think his movies are, unique and super fun to watch. And Royal Tenenbaums is this family drama comedy, that is, that's all centered on this one guy, Royal Tenenbaum, who has just absolutely dominated the psyche of every single person in his life, in most cases damaged them to different extents.
but also allowed them to be these crazy people that they are, which is the delight of the film.
Yeah.
And this is unlike Lex Luthor, who's kind of a straight man within his own comedy team. This is a real, true comedic performance. I mean, it really is. He's not playing the old crusty straight man. There is no Gene Hackman bluster in this guy at all. He's a con artist, really, and everything he does is sneaky and manipulative, and he uses his charm rather than his authority to get what he wants. And it's really well written part, and he really disappears into it in an incredible way. So I'm a big fan of this too. This is also the era of Wes Anderson films where the films, they don't really have this anymore. The films today are full of whimsy and fun, and they bitch slap you a little bit into some harsh realities about the world. But the early Wes Anderson films, Rushmore and Bottle Rocket, this had a core of deep sadness to them. Yeah, and this maybe even typifies that. This might be the saddest of the fun Wes Anderson films, if that makes any sense.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And he plays a character who doesn't let us in on that, and yet it's there nonetheless. And there are characters that do sort of let us into what they're going through and stuff. It's Luke Wilson's best film. But it starts with this enigmatic head of the family and what a prize they got in Hackman, and how just what a spark it is to see him knowing he's doing stuff that's different and interesting and cool. Like you could feel the enthusiasm for the work in a great way. So yeah. I'm sorry if I buried it, here out of the top 5 or whatever, but I feel like there's nothing wrong with it. It really is outstanding. I just think some of the other things are maybe a little more in his wheelhouse and therefore a little more impactful to his career.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously I had it super high on my list, but no, you're right. That's what happens when you have a guy who does the breadth of work as Gene Hackman. Great movies are going to be at number 6. Great movies are going to, fall down the list. It really is. It's no slight. It's still the 6th best. We're calling it.
He's got 100. He has 102 screen credits. So this is number 6. So we're loving it.
And so obviously. I love this movie. I love him. There are moments where he's just so despicable and gross, and there are moments where you're just like, where he's so funny and you love him, and you see a guy.
It's the moments where he's both. That is just, that's what makes an interesting, fascinating character, because he is slippery and gross, and he is lovable, and you do sort of get that this is, I don't know how to explain it, but that this is his disease, and that he coasts through life with a smile on his face, just ripping people off monetarily and emotionally. And
that's a great point.
Can't be changed. He can't be changed. And that's part of what it is to be in a family. Family is extreme in its eccentricity, but the theme there is that it's part of what it is to be in a family. It really is. You have to, whatever this stuff is, however you've been wronged, you do kind of have to get over it to continue. You're forced to do that, or it's not a family at all. And I love that sort of message in the film, and it definitely starts at the top with him. He's outstanding in it.
A few movies that didn't make the list that are really terrific movies, and he's great in them.
Late era comedies, right? As his career was winding down, he was doing more. Tannenbaum's is a comedy with some real substance to it, but he was doing more lighter things. You could tell he was drawn to that more, and so I sort of put this stuff here.
Yeah,
at least to mention it.
Yeah, we have Postcards from the Edge. Obviously, terrific movie.
Mike Nichols, Carrie Fisher's sort of autobiography, really good movie.
And The Birdcage.
He's fantastic in The Birdcage. Another comedic performance. He's brought in to be this senator that has all this presence and that you believe is this guy. And by the end of the movie, he's just one of this weird, crazy crew that we've been spending the whole film with. Another Mike Nichols film. I mean, we've talked about our love for The Birdcage before. It's one of our absolute favorite Robin Williams performances. It's everybody's, but I think it was an inordinately high on our list because of the depth of humanity that he brings to that guy. And it's really fun to be watching a Robin Williams movie where Gene Hackman is the weird comedic clown and Robin Williams is the straight man trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because he's played the straight man to Gene Hackman. He plays the straight man to Nathan Lane. He plays the straight man to Hank Azaria. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's he has those couple moments where he gets to do a Robin Williams thing. So it's like, my fans need this, so I need to be able to do like this, the choreography, the fussy, that whole thing that's iconic. But no, you're right. For the most part, Robin Williams is absolutely, he is the steady, and everything else is around, and it's great.
Hackman has this fantastic scene where he's trying to relate to these guys and be polite, and he's just talking about the foliage. He says that word like 11 times in this. Foliage. It has really excellent foliage, and for you, I wasn't really following it first, but he's talking about the trees in New England changing colors and stuff, and he's, I just don't know how to explain it. It's so delightful. He's really, really great in it. He's really great in Birdcage. So I wanted to have sneak that in here someplace.
And and another movie. Now this is a movie. I have my, I just don't really care for this movie, but Get Shorty. I do acknowledge that he's super fun in Get Shorty. He's it's Barry Sonnenfeld movie. Barry Sonnenfeld, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
who's the author of the book? It's really
Elmore Leonard.
It's an Elmore Leonard movie, and for an Elmore Leonard movie, it's on the lighter side of Leonard, and it requires. Hackman isn't the problem, or Danny DeVito. The problem, I think, is Travolta at the height of his superstar powers. He's into it, but with a better actor who would be willing to play that guy as more of a person, I think you'd have had a better film. But I'm with you on Get Shorty. I don't love it, but I do enjoy it. It's very enjoyable. It's a very nice mix of the crime dramas of the era and the comedies of the era, and Hackman's outstanding in it.
Yeah, Hackman's great. Yeah, it's you could make an argument that it is one of his better performances. I just didn't care for the movie enough to even want to talk about it. But
I feel like we have to mention it.
No, you're right. We have to mention
it.
We mentioned it. All right, number five. Number five is it is one of the top sports movies of all time. I think people would put it really, really high up on that list.
Right up there at the top for sure.
And it's one of his kind of iconic roles. And it's the 1986 movie Hoosiers. And what
he's the best.
What is there to say about Hoosiers?
It's high school, right? It's high school.
Yeah,
right?
high school.
High school basketball coach in a period sports film. And I mean, you almost don't need to go into how awesome he is, because that role sells itself. Any of these sports films that you've seen, the coach is the thing. Often they're the central thing, like they pretty much are in Hoosiers, although it's got a really nice supporting ensemble that makes the whole thing really, really work. But I think it's fair to say that the coach is the central character, and the coach is this God-like thing. It's hard to explain, but the film allows a little bit of a look into who he is as a person, but what he is primarily as a coach, and you can get lost in that, and the film can stop being interesting when that's all it is, and it just never ever does in his hands. He's riveting in it.
Yeah,
in every scene that he's in. It's just an extraordinary film, and it makes you stand up and cheer at the end, like you should at the end of a sports movie. It really is awesome. It on points, it and Tannenbaum sort of tied, and I sort of broke the tie with Hoosiers, because I think Hoosiers is more of a poster work of Hackman and the next film too, and it very much the same way, from the same era. I just feel like these are the roles he was meant to play. It's delightful how he surprises us in Royal Tenenbaums and how the movie surprises us. But these sort of late 80s.
This is Gene at the absolute height of his power, at the height of his like using his movie star charisma to just really add gravity to
everything he's in, at this time, and this Hoosiers is fantastic.
I mean, it's that great. It's he's got this great redemption story, but at the heart of it, at the heart of the entire movie, always is his love of the sport and his love of these young men that are that this team, the love of the idea of team. You can tell that and that overrides everything. And it's got, I was just watching a couple weeks ago, Ted Lasso, they totally stole a Hoosiers bit, the bit where they walk into the giant stadium, and he's like hand me that tape measure. He's like, the court, the basket is still 10 feet high, and blah, blah, blah. And Ted Lasso did it. Of course, in England, all the soccer pitches are different sizes. So he goes, give me the tape measure. And he's like, I think you'll find that this pitch is the same as ours at AFC Richmond. And then Coach Beer's like, No, actually, it's 20 yards wider on each side. What?
Oh
Okay.
man,
Well,
America.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Ted Lasso, but you can just keep performing it for me every week if you want.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed that very much.
Yeah.
It's a great scene, and that's a great.
It's a great send up on that scene. Yeah,
great reversal on it.
Yeah.
But that when he does that, he's like this. It's
play the game. So it's all about the game. Yeah, it's so wonderful. All right.
In 571, the Submarine Movie, Harvey Keitel has this great speech where he's telling Matthew McConaughey that he's not a member of the crew anymore. He's the commanding officer, and he's got this phrase, and he says the commanding officer is a great and terrible thing. He's trying to get this kid who's obviously capable, but still trying to get him to grow up a little bit and understand that if he doesn't know what's going on, then keep it to himself and just keep barking orders at people. You have to be that now.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of Hackman and Hoosiers, and he's an inspiring guy, and he's a nurturing guy in a lot of ways, but that coach in Hoosiers is a great and terrible thing. And you just go along and to greatness or get out. I love it. It's really, really cool. It's as cool. That part's been played a million times by a million people, and it's as good in Hoosiers as it ever was. And so that's why it's here.
Absolutely. All right. And a couple other films. His next film right after this, I believe, it was No Way Out.
He's fantastic in No Way Out.
Yeah.
He's really, really good in it. He's really super good in it. That's a fantastic performance in a slightly slighter film, where he's not even the star, because even in his own scenes, Will Patton is basically chewing the scenery to pieces. Yeah. So Hackman, but it's this great mix of this guy who's this powerful man in Hollywood who does this crazy thing and just becomes reduced to a useless pile of rubble for the rest of the film. And his willingness to play that, the ugliness of that, the jealousy of it, the pettiness of this guy, and to lean into that, to lean into the tough-nosed Senator Arms Committee chairman, who's also this just pathetic, abusive, frightened loser, and you get it all in the course of a film. Is extraordinary. Yeah. So
we brought up No Way Out several times on this show over the last few years, and so if you are, for some reason, if you are someone our age and missed it in the 80s when it came out, it's worth revisiting if you are younger.
Techno thriller from the 80s, really good.
It's really great. Other movies,
or if you have some aversion to Costner for some reason, a lot of people do. This one's not the one to skip. He's as good in it as he is in anything.
Yeah, you know what? These are the guys. Yeah, be careful if you don't like Kevin Costner. Be careful watching No Way Out. Be careful watching A Perfect Place, because you'll end up going, "Oh yeah, no, he's a great actor."
Perfect World. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, Perfect World. Thank you, Perfect World.
But you're damn right. Yes.
Yeah, because it's easy to use him as a punching bag if you've never seen those movies, because you've seen those movies and you're like, oh damn, yeah, he's really good. All right, other movies, Class Action, the Michael Apted film with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
We talked about that during the Michael Apted episode. It's a fantastic family drama, courtroom drama, one of those lost kind of films. Even at that time was big, they were everywhere, but they were beginning to be lost. That's a wonderful movie with him and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio play estranged father and daughter who are duking it out in a class action lawsuit and bringing all of their troubled family history with them. And it's a really good film. Not great, but really, really good.
Really good. And Gene Hackman in The Firm, the Tom Cruise, Sidney Pollack, John Grisham.
He's fantastic in The Firm.
He's really great in The Firm.
A little bit of what I'm talking about, although in The Firm it's even stronger, but a little bit of what I'm talking about in No Way Out. But in The Firm, he's not a guy he's not a complete hypocrite. He's a guy who has some good qualities, who's lost his soul and has totally lost his soul and is grappling, even though this really isn't part of the movie, we see it as part of the performance, is grappling with that idea the whole time. And makes some surprising decisions, and I really think he's outstanding in that movie. Hard to imagine anyone else, in fact, playing that role, actually. So.
All right, and his our number 4 movie is maybe his most despicable role, maybe. Yeah, he's a pretty horrible dude. But it's his role as what the character's name? Oh my god. FBI agent Rupert Anderson in Mississippi Burning.
You think he's despicable?
He's pretty despicable.
Well, he is, but he's also the wish fulfillment alpha male in the story for us. Like, he's the only guy who brings ultimately any illusion of justice to this incredibly terrible, tragic situation. It's Willem Dafoe's buttoned up tight, J. Edgar Hoover protege that actually breaks down based on all the racial hatred and all the just awful murderous stuff going on in this Mississippi town, to his way of thinking, to finally bring somebody to justice over these murders that happened. Mississippi Burning is an Alan Parker. We talked about it in our Alan Parker episode briefly. It's a movie about racial tensions that has almost no named African-American characters in it, which when you watch it now, that's the thing about it that makes me go, wow. Although even if they'd have insisted on that at the time, it would have just been one. Which wouldn't have, I don't think that almost made it worse. It's hard to explain, but it really is it's a racially charged crime story take from the white cops and the white racists point of view, and the victims are never, well, I guess they're seen very briefly in flashback at the beginning, and the culture, the whole African American culture in small town Mississippi during the early 60s is shown, but they're shown as sort of these nameless, faceless victims. The racist townspeople giving interviews for the news are featured more in that film than African Americans are. So it's a weird movie in that way. I'll give you that. But I never saw him as despicable. I just saw him. I mean, that's not the term I would use. I get what you're saying. He's ruthless, but he's this avenging angel who's bringing accountability to this town, to these systems. And he's doing it in this way as this guy who's coming home to this horrible place. Yeah. He's, he throws the N-word around just as much as anybody. He's a difficult guy. No doubt, but he's an old school Wyatt Earp style lawman who does get the job done. And I think I think Hackman plays him with a lot of humor and a lot of humanity that many other actors, there's some others who might be able to do it, but many other actors would really struggle to bring across. When he's torturing Brad Dourif's character, whatever. I mean, I think we're all thoroughly on his side. The film gets you to the point where you want to see that happen. And that's weird. It maybe is despicable. Yeah.
I'm listening to you describe it, and I'm finding myself agreeing. It's just, I haven't seen the movie in a very long time. And so I'm just remembering the feelings that I had. And just, the whole movie, you just feel,
yeah.
But
the movie wants you to feel that. None of that is by accident. It takes on these themes and the things I'm talking about. It takes even on its flaws in a very direct way that it is still very, very powerful when you watch it. But it is a 1988 movie about racial tensions with like I say, no racial diversity really in its cast. Just the extras, a couple characters, one family, a little bit, but that's secondary to it. And I'm sorry to do this, it's sidetracking an episode full of sidetracks, but Murder in Mississippi with Blair Underwood and Tom Hulce and Jennifer Grey. That's the prequel to Mississippi Burning, and it's just a TV movie, but if it's out there, please see it. It is also outstanding. The two go together really, really well.
Really awesome.
And to be fair, Murder in Mississippi is is about again, it's not really about the community. It's about these activists, these college kids who go down to this town to get Black people registered to vote and all this stuff. And I mean, and they just have no idea what they're getting into. They've entered into a horrible world, a despicable world, really.
Yeah, let's quick talk about a couple other movies on this list. The next movie that he did after Mississippi Burning is called The Package with Tommy Lee Jones.
He's done a lot of military roles in a lot of military movies.
This is one that I have not seen. I'm looking at this one. Nope, I have not seen them.
You're in for a treat. The Package is really, really good.
Super fun.
In a lot of ways, it's as good as any of these. It's more of a lighter entertainment, but it's Andrew Davis who made The Fugitive, amongst other things. And it's very much a fugitive quality story where it's a twisty, turny sort of conspiracy story. So I won't give you too much about it, but Hackman and Tommy Lee Jones are really, really well balanced protagonist and antagonist, and the plot is labyrinthian and fun. And Hackman, from his days as a Marine, when he shows up as a military guy in a film, it's something to see.
He takes it seriously when he's
and this is great. He did a bunch of these espionage / military / crime stories. His career really was more about films like The Package than it was about these highlights. So I wanted to kind of get it in as the quintessential side film.
The other movie that we have in here, Narrow Margin. It's very, very similar to this, trying to keep the
remake of the hostage on a train film or whatever. Right. He's super fun in that. Narrow Margin's really fun.
Yeah, that's
Hitchcockian's. It's sort of Hitchcockian, but it's sort of not. It's hard to explain. It's like a cheap B crime movie, but it's basically, I don't know. It's
really good. I mean, like if you're sitting there going, God, I need an Ann Archer fix. There you go. Watch Narrow Margin.
She's never better.
No, she's great. I love Ann Archer. All right. So, and of course,
I typically don't. I think she doesn't let us in. I don't think she lets us in very much. But the lady she plays in Narrow Margin which is okay. I mean, it takes all kinds, right? Sometimes that really, really works. The great thing about the woman in Narrow Margin is she's in completely over her head. And Hackman plays like who Bruce Willis would have played 15 years later. He plays the one-man army against these crime lords and corrupt politicians and hired assassins. They all come after them on this train, and he's got to fight them all off, and it's kind of awesome.
Yep. One of his, we talked about this movie on our disaster movie, one of our disaster movie episodes when we were going through the movies of the 70s. And it's another big kind of a touchstone moment in his career. He kind of carries this disaster movie, and that's the Poseidon Adventure. Not in our countdown, but movie that we wanted to
friend of the show, Michael, it would be on number 1 on his list, and we'd all be sitting here shaking our heads and going, what are you talking about? But but he would kill us if we didn't at least mention it. And it is mentionable. It really is. He's really, really good in it. In fact, the film is nothing but kids and famous old people at awkward stages in their career in formal attire, without Hackman as the real action star of the thing and the real catalyst for the story. You got nothing. So it really is the thing that makes it work. He's no offense to Ernest Borgnine and Shelley Winters, like everybody in Poseidon is really good, but it falls apart without a real actor playing something of a central character that drives the thing along. That's Gene's job, and the character's interesting and the performance is commanding. So, you got to have a linchpin. You got to have someone who is the anchor for all of this stuff. And because in later films where the linchpin is Charlton Heston, the films, they're not the same. When it's Hackman, surrounded on all sides by movies with Oscar nominations and stuff, giving it his all and committing to the material, it takes all those other people along for the ride. And that's nothing against Heston, who I kind of like, but when you've got him going, baby, It doesn't. No, you can't grab onto the coattails of that in any meaningful way. Hackman and Poseidon Adventure brings everybody along for the ride, and it is awesome. And I really give him a lot of credit for its success. Partly the part is really well written too, which helps for a film like that.
Our number 3 film is a movie that you talked about on your solo sojourn into 70s conspiracy films. I should have committed
movie show of the Joel and Ryan.
Oh, just wait until I have to do my solo episode, which I owe you at some point. Give you a week off. But yeah, it is Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. Yeah. I mean, and if you want to know, if
Conversation was number 1 on my list.
Yeah, if you want to go, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
neither Joel nor I got our number 1s. We both outvoted each other, so not too far down the list, but far enough down the list that the number 1 film on our list represents something of a compromise between the two of us, and it certainly is worthy of the spot. These next 3 films are pretty incredible, but I'll just get into Conversation for its own sake. This is the most complex and tortured and interesting character that he's ever played, and it's the character that makes the performance in this case, because his usual tricks, some of them are in here. He gets to yell and bark at John Casale, and he gets to do some of the Gene Hackman things that we're used to, but there's just, even though the story is nothing. It's a story you can't get to stay on a hanger in your closet. It's this weird, obtuse conspiracy thing where you don't even really find out the answers very much. So spoiler alert for The Conversation. What makes it go is this weird clown show that he's surrounded with, played by people you wouldn't expect. Harrison Ford. It's just kind of amazing, and it's the technical filmmaking is on such an incredibly high level. Robert Duvall, John Casale, who's brilliant in it, brilliant in everything he ever did. That show is coming, I promise. If you can stand to listen to me for 2 hours, just trip over myself and weep with joy at the existence of a person, that will be the John Casale. I guess it'll have to be top 5, right? What do you do? 5, 6 movies?
Yeah.
Every one of which were nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Sorry, enough of John. But John plays like I was talking a little bit about Al Pacino in Scarecrow. John plays a character who takes this insular, private, quiet, brooding guy and pokes at him. Just the story pokes at him. Terry Garr a little bit pokes at him, but Casale's the one who really gets this dude's inner anger and tortured self to come out of his mouth, and it's that tension that's in this movie, not so much some of the more blustery roles on either side of it, that I love so much about The Conversation. I don't want to say it's underrated, because there's people out there who believe, cinephiles, they all think it's like Coppola's best movie. It's the film he did on Paramount's dime in between Godfather movies. He made this movie nobody cared about, nobody wanted, but that he's like, my reward is I want to do this movie. That's my reward for Godfather 1, and that's my price for shooting Godfather 2 for you people next. And a lot of filmmakers find themselves in that situation. They just had the big monster hit. They can do anything they want. And this is such a little gem of a thing. And it's all without Hackman, it's nothing. And again, could Jack Nicholson have been awesome in it? Probably, but it's one of those performances where you watch it, and you're like, it could only be him, or it would be diminished somehow. I love it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's good. All right. Number 2. Hold on. Make sure I'm not. Our number 2 film was the movie that was number 1 on my list, and it is the most iconic of. In my opinion, I mean, I don't know. It's his most iconic, most well-known role.
Just him in that hat really.
Him in the pork pie
does
hat.
the trick.
And it is The French Connection. William Friedkin, 1971. Earlier in the show, when Ryan and I were talking about him coming out of retirement to talk about a movie, that's what we're talking about. We're talking the 50th anniversary of the French Connection.
William Friedkin's The French Connection, and that was, I don't want to say it was from the fact that it was a big commercial movie and that the cinema verite in it. And if you don't know what I mean when I say that, it's this fly on the wall storytelling, you know what I mean? That movie is really raw and really just feels very gritty and real. The city feels very real. Friedkin puts, there's this scene in this bar and Friedkin puts the camera, he does it all in one shot. He puts the camera like all the way down the hallway where the restrooms are. So you can barely even hear what they're talking about. And you just feel like you're a witness to something dark and ugly and powerful, as opposed to like all the other films of its time, or the vast majority of other films of their time, which were either full of gags, kind of like Bonnie and Clyde, and it was this sort of collection of moments that were very memorable, or they were these well-written things by people who learned how to write plays, where they just had this nice 3-act structure and character growth and stuff. Like this, even when he describes it in the interview, right? He kind of is like, well, he's trying to do this. Like, first he used the word trying, which I find is, because, it's about drugs and it's about all this ugliness, but it's not this crime story with this main bad guy. It really is this sort of nebulous, this network is moving these narcotics into this area and this sort of thing. It's all this. It's a guy who just repeatedly, through the ruthlessness that he shows a little bit of in Mississippi Burning, but without really any of the charm, right. What's the name of the character? I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm
Popeye
Doyle.
Yep.
He's a blunt instrument to be used against criminals.
Yeah.
And hats off to the brilliant Roy Scheider too, who plays a fantastic second banana to him in it, and gives him something interesting to play off. The two of them together are outstanding.
Yeah.
So I like
it's great. I mean, you talk about the cinema verite aspect of it and everything, and like when you watch The French Connection, it looks like, God dang, it just looks like they, it looks like guerrilla filmmaking. It looks like they just went out, and that's because it was, they shot a lot of these things illegally and just went out and did it. And that's what a big thing of this article that we referenced earlier talked about, when they're kind of revisiting French Connection after 50 years. And how that area of Brooklyn looks completely different. It's got one of the great car chases in movie history. Yeah,
it's a car chasing a train.
Chasing a train. Yep.
So it's really ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really great.
It's a car chasing an elevated train to the next station through the streets of New York. It takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And still does, and that's a sign of a great one. Joel always wants to do best car chases, but I feel like, God, there's so many.
Right.
It's one of those topics that, I want to do that. Everyone would love that. We somehow did sword fights, but I just feel like there's a million. How do I choose best ones? It's impossible. It's like saying, best movie with airplane in it or something. I don't know. It's just like it's too many. But this
best
would be on the list.
With jokes. Let's do a best movie with jokes in it.
Excellent. This would be on the list. This would be on the best car chases. That's one of the ones we're sure of. Maybe we're over pimping it. There would have been some pretty amazing action sequences since, but
well, I mean,
the reality of this and the danger that you feel during it, it's really is, and the single-minded obsession that this guy has.
Yeah, it is. It's the car chase sequences in The French Connection and in Bullet. That's what sets the stage for every car, every car chase after that, every car sequence after that in any movies. That is, they become the very high bar, the very high baseline that if you're going to do a car chase, if you're not going to do it, remotely close to, trying to do something unique or thrilling with it, like a Bullet or French Connection, then what are you even doing? Just cut the car chase then.
Friedkin spent his whole career to some degree chasing that chase. There's an incredible chase in To Live and Die in LA.
Yep.
There's an amazing slow speed car chase in Jade. You know, when he needed to step up and make a chase sequence, even though none of them live up to the French Connection, they still are pretty remarkable each time. He understood the lesson that, wow, you know, I did this one, that's gonna haunt me, and he made The Exorcist and stuff, and he made all kinds of stuff he's super famous for, so you don't feel bad for him, but it's it is one of those things. If I had I didn't have French Connection too far down on my list. I think I got it 4th or something, but if I had it lower on my list, it's because this guy is even though his single-mindedness is an important part of the character and why a young Gene Hackman is really ideal to play him, it is a little one note compared to some of the other cooler things he did as he became a better and more nuanced actor. So when I'm watching it, I'm always sort of aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But that's not really a criticism. It is exactly right for the part. It's right up here at the top where it belongs. So
I have no problem with it being at number 2. I get it. Same thing that, Royal Tenenbaums was down at 6. Same sort of thing. It's just personal preference.
But we named anything since then that isn't super awesome? I mean, really haven't.
No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean is all of these, you were absolutely right. There's from 6 to 1, there's, these are all
cinematic performance perfection. They're unimpeachably great performances. So,
and our number 1 film, as you said, it's kind of a compromise. Well, if every compromise,
neither of us had it number 1, but
it was really high on both of our lists. And that is his role in Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven.
It's number 1 because it's the one movie we totally agreed on the list. The other one that got 14 points that we split the vote on was that. What was that? Do you have the point?
Yep. I have.
We chatted at 7. It was the other movie we agreed on.
Mississippi Burning was at.
We each chatted in the same spot on the list, and that got it a nice little. It made it leapfrog a couple other films because of that. But this film, I'm sorry, I stole your thunder. Go ahead.
No, number 1 is Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. Little Bill Daggett. And he's what a
Little Bill movie. Is a powerhouse of a cinematic character, and Hackman, so every wink, every movement, the economy of genius in this performance is staggering when you watch it. He's the perfect villain, even though he's not even that villainous really ultimately. He's still the perfect foil for a Clint Eastwood leading man who's going to be all those things we know Eastwood to be. He's going to be a man of little words, and Eastwood is playing this burned out, old, tired version of his iconic gunslinger characters, which is, of course, what makes the movie. And those adventures, Morgan Freeman, the kid, I can't remember his name. He stopped acting for some reason.
James Woolvett.
Yeah, their discussions and stuff are fantastic and are the soul of the film. But the place where the movie comes alive is Gene Hackman and his crew, his deputies, Richard Harris, Saul Rubinek. It's him literally taking stage in these scenes and performing and teaching the lessons of the myth of the Old West in this incredible way that still rings true and that feels true about every Western we've ever seen. So hats off to David Peoples for writing this guy, because holy smokes. But Hackman won the Oscar for French Connection first, and then later for this, in and amongst several nominations for some of these other films. But he is undeniably powerful late performance by him that it's just stunning. And we listed them here, not really to talk about them, but there was this flood of him acting in Westerns.
Yeah.
He plays a cheap B movie version of the same guy in Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead.
Really, really fun. He was Wyatt Earp. He was the Earp brothers' father in the Wyatt Earp movie by Lawrence Kasdan. There's another one here that I'm forgetting.
Geronimo. Yeah, Geronimo.
Oh yeah, but he's really good in Geronimo. Walter Hill's Geronimo. So that's kind of fun because he felt both like he was a rather commanding man of substance in these films, but he's also having fun in them. He's having a ton of fun in Unforgiven, and he's almost off the charts fun in Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead. Yeah, it's a bonkers role.
That role, that movie wouldn't even exist without Unforgiven, I don't think.
Oh,
maybe
probably
I'm
not.
wrong about that, but so Unforgiven in a lot of ways was the gift that kept on giving for a while there, which was really, really cool. I don't know. What do you have to say about it? I mean, Little Bill, he's just.
Well, he's that single-minded, justice at all costs.
I know, but his solutions as sheriffs are to keep the peace. When these guys do this bad thing, his punishment for them it's extremely unreasonable. If there's a villain in the movie, and you can't fault her, but if there's a villain in the movie, I think it's Frances Fisher's character. She's the one that will not let go an ounce. Even the victim of this terrible crime that happens early in the film is ready to take the nice horse and ready to sort of get on with their life. Yeah. And Frances has had enough. She's this, I hate to say this, but because I don't want to equate what I just called a villain with this, but she's this person who is making a movement of justice for women on her own by her own force of will, and will lie and cheat and do whatever it takes to get what she deems justice. And that actually starts with Little Bill not wanting to kill and hang a bunch of people. Like, you can tell his heart isn't really in doing that at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. Which I love. The catalyst, they all starting out as being in retirement and wanting to give up this sort of gunslinger life. And because of this awful thing that this drunken asshole does, they all get pulled back in to their old and dark ways. Yeah, you could say that his unwillingness to do maybe what was necessary in the name of keeping the peace, to not do what was maybe necessary in the name of justice, is ultimately what leads to his You're
downfall.
Not even going to give him a whooping?
Yeah. I mean, so it's, it is. And again, I mean, and you can get into, well, the crime happened against a woman, and a crime happened against a prostitute.
Frances is so good at it too. We might be whores, but we're not horses. It's just really strong stuff.
All right. So that is our list. Let's point out a couple other movies that happened later in his career. I really love his turn as like a jury. What is his title? He's like a jury consultant in Runaway Jury. Where he, he's like, you hire me,
film performance, and it's worthy of him. It's a light entertainment by comparison to some of these powerhouse films, but it's a role that is very much worthy of him. He's outstanding in it. So I love Runaway Jury.
Yeah, he plays he's in Heartbreakers with Sigourney Weaver.
A very Royal Tenenbaums-esque performance. He's really, really fun in Heartbreakers. Really having a good time, and then his final film, of course, also is a comedy, Welcome to Mooseport, which isn't great, but it is cute. It is what it is. It's not bad. It's lovely. It's Runaway Jury might have been a good way to go out. Royal Tenenbaums would have been an exceptional final film. Welcome to Mooseport isn't as good as those, but it ain't bad. And
no, it's Donald Petrie. It's fun. It's fluff.
Fun idea for a movie, and it's a fun send up of stuff, and it's a movie about sort of losers and schlubs and the loser schlub within us, and it's not a bad film. And they often talk about Hackman's last film and they want him to come back and do another one. They said for years about Sean Connery too, his contemporary. Geez, yeah. I hope League of Extraordinary Gentlemen isn't his last movie. Well, it was, and that's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
And he has come out. He did a couple. He narrated a couple documentaries, again about the Marines. And that's
his brother sounds just like him and does voiceovers for like United Airlines commercials and things like that throughout the years.
Oh, get out.
Whenever you think you're hearing Gene Hackman in a commercial, like doing a voiceover, I don't think his brother even does this anymore, but he did a bunch of them back in the day. It's kind of fun. They use him as a sound alike when they need one, which is kind of cool.
In 2001, a scientist named Roy Tucker discovered an asteroid that had not been discovered and named it for Gene Hackman.
What's it called? Gene Hackman?
It's called 55397 Hackman.
Cool name.
So, yeah. The Hackman
It'll
asteroid.
Probably destroy us all one day.
Maybe that that would be, oh, what a bummer that would be. After this great career, after this great, the great gifts he's given us, and it's like Hackman's gonna destroy us. Oh, Hackman's gonna crash into us and destroy us. And
Hackman's the real life wolf beaterman. It's gonna come and kill us all.
All right, that is our list of the movies, our top Gene Hackman movies. Disagree with us? Think that
agree with us?
Yeah, agree with us. Do you think that his cameo in Young Frankenstein should have been number one? Well, let us know. Let us know on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook.
We squeezed 30 movies in there. That's how many we've at least mentioned. So, we feel like we did it justice, but if we missed a big one, bring it on. There's still a couple of my favorites missing.
There's a lot. I mean, yeah, again, the guys had 102 credits. Right. So yeah, Movie Show with Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok, which at some point I'll get back to posting things on TikTok again.
Woo! We're all waiting for more TikToks from Joel.
Yeah, TikTok. Sure. TikTok. So yeah, and of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, comment below. We'll get back to you. Thank you so much.
Like it. All better like it, or I swear I'm coming to your homes and doing something.
All right, everybody.
Some sort of trick version of the trick or treat that's coming up. I'm going to do it because we got to have those likes. We got to have them. Now's the time. Step up. How's that for a motivating speech, Joel?
Ryan, I'm here. Let me get a tape measure. And the internet is the same size here as it is in Hollywood. So therefore, people, you can go ahead and like and share and comment on this stuff and get the word out about the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And it will have just as much impact as it would in Hollywood. It's the same sort of thing. It's
well said.
I love you.
I like that. That's a nicer approach than my threatening.
Here,
which I guess I should probably take back. I won't come to your house. I don't even know
what, listeners? You know what, listeners? I love you all. I love you guys. All right. Thank you so much for joining us for this week. Next week next week's the big week, isn't it?
Is it?
Am I right? Yeah. So,
Halloween double features with
the Halloween double features. We're gonna have our screen is gonna be jam packed of goodness. Yeah. So get looking.
Hey Joel.
Yeah.
How many of the Halloween features have you watched?
I have watched 4 of them so far.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I got to swing by your house and get a couple more. And
I've watched 6 of them, so I'm doing okay.
I've watched 4 of them and have enjoyed, I think, 2 of them.
That should make for a heated discussion.
But yeah, it's gonna be super fun. It's a horror movie Halloween double feature that is coming up. We have many friends of the show joining us, and it is going to be a good time. So until then, thank you all so much for joining us on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.